and we do record all of these, and we have these available on our YouTube page, which you can also get to through our website, which is www.tabartscenter.org. All right, just to start us off tonight, thank you everyone for joining Tabb Arts Center nonprofit Inequities in Real Estate Town Hall. We have an amazing panel tonight, and we just kind of want to educate and make our community aware to a variety of inequities that we have that maybe we don't even notice that exists within our society, and specifically in Greensboro. So let's go ahead and get to know our panelists a little bit better and find out a little bit more about the organization. Okay, so Tabb Arts Center nonprofit earned its 501c3 status in 2016. We are the nonprofit version of the Artist Block. So the Artist Block is our for-profit business, and we work together to bring quality art education, art therapy, and overall awareness to the community. Our goal is to engage all ages, socioeconomic groups through culture and the arts. So we do a lot of a variety of beautification projects, all types of things. Tabb Arts Center employs and collaborates with a variety of performing and visual artists. It advocates for inclusion and diversity in the art community, and therefore does not discriminate based on race, gender, creed, or sexuality. So to learn more about us, please visit our website at www.tabartscenter.org, or you can go to either one of our social media outlets, Instagram, Facebook. They're both Tabb Arts Center. All right, so the next thing is just a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish in 2020. 2020 has been a challenging year, but Tabb Arts Center nonprofit has still been able to flourish and be productive. So one of the things that I was just speaking about, Arts Greensboro actually sponsored and allowed us to, or funded, our street mural. So earlier this year, we had a street mural that's located on Lindsay Street. Across the street is by Cumberland Street, that you can go and visit. It's Say It Loud. We also do a variety of online classes monthly. We've had craft classes, film, crafting, sculpting classes, as well as we offer art therapy classes for Alzheimer's patients, senior citizens. We do a variety of dance, music. We also have an annual summer camp. So we've been doing this for about 4 years now. The children get a free lunch and breakfast. They learn about the film, theater industry, as well as the art industry by creating their own sets. They work with writers to write their own play and short film, and then they perform it for the community as well as show their film. So that's also located on our YouTube page. So you can see some of the films that the children have done, as well as their play from last year. It's really great, really great. Some of the panel discussions we've done. So these panel discussions we've entitled Tabb Talks. So the Tabb Talks are essentially giving back to the community, talking to the community, finding out what people want to know, what they want to learn more about. So as 2020 has been unfolding, we've had a lot of social unrest. We've also had a lot of fear, understandably so, with coronavirus. So therefore, a lot of people have been inside. So we've created these panel discussions talking about the things that creates this social unrest, which really is exhibited in a lot of variety or a lot of packets of our lives. So we had our police reform town hall, which was our very first town hall discussion, where we had the chief of police, Judge Laura Cubbage, Councilwoman Mary Kay, as well as community activist Irving Allen. We had our art and politics conversation, discussing the inequities that have existed within the art community and still exist in Greensboro. Laura Way was a part of that, Ryan Dill, Darlene McClinton, Brian Turman, Maria Gonzalez, as well as Princess Johnson. And then our last TAB talk was really a follow-up from the police reform. We talked about law, policy, and community. And we had a lot of feedback from the police reform where we had specific individuals that experienced what they felt was an injustice. And so we spoke with one of those individuals, Celeste Brandon, and we had attorney Jan Pritchett, as well as Steve Allen, Ziddy, and several other people kind of talk about what we can do whenever we feel an injustice has happened. We also have a variety of different classes that we've already had, some business of art classes, the professional development class. In January, we'll be having more business classes and professional development classes for artists. So please stay tuned for that. In December coming up, we're going to have a really fun fundraiser. So we're going to do dinner and a movie. It's going to be at Blandwood Mansion, actually by the Carriage House on the lawn. We're going to have fire pits. We're going to show a little preview of something that the children have done, as well as a preview of a movie that Blandwood has done as well. It's a scary movie. It's very interesting. I think that you guys will love it. It's a part of a fundraiser that they're doing as well. So you get a little clip, but you can hit another link and pay like $5 to watch the whole movie. But it's going to be so much fun with your tickets. It's $50 for a person, $80 for a couple with your ticket. It includes a full entree that's catered by Images Catering. So you can either get a chicken dish, a fish dish, or a vegetarian dish. It's all up to you. Once you pay for the ticket, you let us know what you want and it will be customized and bought to you. So this is going to be a really, really fun event in the middle of Greensboro. You can register on Eventbrite. Okay, and so to just tell you very quickly, I'm not going to go into everyone's full bios, but I do want to let you know a little bit about our panelists and a little bit about myself. I'm Sunny Gravely Fouché. I am the executive director of TAB Art Center Nonprofit. I'm also one of the co-owners of the Artist Block LLC. I received my undergraduate degree from Howard University, where our vice president now is currently from, Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala. Thank you. I'm also, I also have my master's degree from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. But since we have opened TAB Art Center Nonprofit, we've been able to do, as I showed you before, the annual art summer camp, our Alzheimer's art program, and several beautification projects that you can see throughout North Carolina. All right, we're gonna go on to Melvin Skip Alston, who is a native of Durham, North Carolina. He was educated in the Durham City School System and continued his education at North Carolina Central University with a major in business administration. In June 1982, at the age of 25, Skip started the Alston Realty Group Incorporated, a real estate firm specializing in property management and real estate sales. The Alston Realty Group Incorporated currently employs 4 licensed real estate brokers, 16 full-time employees, and manages properties in the Greensboro area valued at over $25 million. Skip is also the founder and president of several other successful businesses in the Greensboro area, such as Alston & Alston LLC, specializing in providing political consultant services and residential and multifamily investment services, and East Market Street Square, specializing in purchasing commercial real estate for development and renovation. Skip was elected to the Guilford Board of County Commissioners in 1992 and served for 20 years. In 2002, Skip became the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, making him the first African-American to serve in this position. Skip was elected 4 additional times as chairman, 2008 and 2012. Skip was reelected again in 2020 for a 4-year term. Next, we have Benjamin Briggs. Benjamin Briggs graduated from NC State University in 1989 and from Boston University in 1995 with a master's degree in historic preservation. His internships led him to spend time with the Historic Charleston Foundation, as well as the Australian Heritage Commission. After North Carolina State, he restored several North Guilford County landmark properties, including the Ecker House in High Point, for which he received a Caraway Award of Merit in 1993 from Preservation North Carolina. Returning to North Carolina from Boston, he took a position as program head of the Historic Preservation Technology Program at Randolph Community College, where he completed architectural survey work of High Point and Alamance counties. His newspaper column for the High Point Enterprise, entitled Tracing Our Past, was a collection of preservation essays that were incorporated into his book, The Architecture of High Point, in 2008. Benjamin has served as Executive Director of Preservation Greensboro since 2003. During this time, the organization has created an inclusive and proactive message to the community, including community reinvestment and equity, cultivated narratives for Blandwood Mansion of Women's History and the Decorative Arts, and initiated outreach programs such as the annual tour of historic homes and gardens and a neighborhood walking tour. Next, we have Kimberly Cameron, who is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Anti-Real Estate Foundation, Incorporated. Kim moved to Durham from the Atlanta area in January 2013 to take the position of Director of Real Estate for Self-Help, where she provided strategic leadership to the 20-member real estate team. She was appointed as Executive Director of the NC Anti-Real Estate Foundation in March of 2020. Ms. Cameron was the first Black woman to receive a Bachelor of Science in Construction Management from the University of Wisconsin, and went on to obtain her MBA Finance from Concordia University of Wisconsin. Kimberly Cameron has over 25 years in community development experience. She has worked on projects that served as catalysts for revitalization of neighborhoods in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Atlanta, and Savannah, Georgia, Durham, and Greensboro, North Carolina. Kim served as a project manager for the Renaissance Shops at Phillips Avenue in Northeast Central Greensboro, which revitalized a 45,000 square foot shopping center that was defunct since 1998. All right, our next panelist, Marty Kotis. Greensboro native William Marshall Marty Kotis III is a developer, restaurateur, art curator, and member of the Board of Governors of the University of North Carolina System. He's a graduate of Grimsley High School in UNC Chapel Hill, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration. He also holds an MBA from UNC Greensboro. As president and CEO of Kotis Holdings, a Greensboro-based commercial real estate development company, Marty oversees holdings in Greensboro and across North and South Carolina. His restaurants and entertainment holdings include Daryl's Wood Fire Grill, Pig Pounder Brewery, Burger Warfare, Red Cinemas, and Painted Catering. He is the founder and curator of Kotis Street Art. Marty has commissioned more than 125 installations on his buildings and is a strong supporter of public art, believing its accessibility adds value to the community. He's an avid swimmer. He has worked and traveled to Africa to work with several nonprofits. It's a lot of things we don't know about Marty. All right. Our next panelist is Ray Trapp. Currently, Ray Trapp serves as the Director of External Affairs for North Carolina State University, which works to promote the university's legislative outreach to federal, state, and local elected officials, state agencies, higher education stakeholders, alumni, and others who play a role in advancing and supporting policy and legislation that align with the priorities of university. He previously served as Guilford County Commissioner representing District 8 from 2012 to 2017. He won his first election to the County Commission in 2012 and was reelected without opposition in 2016. Trapp's volunteer public service has been extensive. He has chaired the Greensboro Zoning Commission and served on the boards of the Greensboro Minimum Housing Standards Commission, Affordable Housing Management, the Greensboro Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Welfare Reform Liaison Project. And then our last panelist was my third grade teacher. I tell everyone that. Goldie, I love you. Dr. Goldie Wells, a retired educator, has served as president of Saints Academy and College in Lexington, Mississippi, as Title I Director for the Iredell, Statesville, schools and taught in the Raleigh, Wake, and Guilford County school systems in the state of North Carolina. Wells is a member of the Board of Trustees of Wells Memorial Church of God in Christ. She was elected Greensboro City Councilwoman, District 2 in 2005, and currently she is serving as Councilwoman for the district again. Originally from Edenton, North Carolina, Wells has undergraduate and graduate degrees from Hampton University and North Carolina State University, and a doctorate from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So I know I kind of went through these quickly because we want to look at a small clip before we go to the questions that the panels will be discussing. And this is just to kind of give everybody an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about inequities within real estate. This will be sent to all the audience. So the audience will get the whole PowerPoint presentation where they'll be able to view this link as well as see details about each panelist when we're done. Next, we're going to view a small clip from Good Morning America.
All right, let me pull that up. Just one moment.
But kind of to document it.
A woman in Florida is recording the moment she has decided to do something really hard.
Because it does seem like one of the few ways that we can achieve economic fairness by just having my husband be in the house by himself and taking down all evidence that he has a Black family.
Her name is Abina Horton. She is a labor and employment attorney. And this is her husband, Alex Horton, an artist. Last June, they set out to get an appraisal of their home in Jacksonville, Florida, hoping to refinance and pay down the mortgage. A home filled with books and photos and love. Her family, his family. But when the appraiser came, Abina was there and said she felt something unsettling.
It clicked in my mind almost immediately that I understand what the issue was here. Why did I let myself forget that I live in America as a Black person and that I need to take some extra steps to get a fair result?
The appraisal comes back. It is shockingly low. Even the bank couldn't make sense of that number. Coming out of the first appraisal, was it rage? Was it exhaustion?
It was exhaustion, I would say. This person is being so petty and hateful, and he's wasting my time.
So she decided to get a second appraisal with a new appraiser. Same house, but something different.
Hey, it's Abina again, and back with another edition of the things that we are taking down from our walls. There are a few things in my house that are demonstrably Black. So clearly the pictures that we have all over the house with all of our family members, with my grandmother getting married back in the 40s. We have the picture of Charlie Bolden, who's an African-American astronaut. Pictures of me when I was a baby. Black Panther.
We both put away pictures, and it's like, these are people I love, these are people I care about, and I need to hide them. That was very tough.
And then, of course, the primary thing that we did was remove both me and my son from the home during the second appraisal.
But when you're doing this, what does that do to the spirit?
It's crushing the spirit, of course. I'm ashamed of it. I'll be honest. I'm ashamed of the fact that my son will see that this is something that I did. I'm ashamed to say that I really wanted to refinance and pay off my house sooner and have full equity in my home. And so I was willing to put up with that indignity to do it because I knew it was going to be effective. So it was a combination of pragmatism and deep and profound sadness doing that.
She took down all the photos of her family, replacing them only with photos of her husband and his white family. And he is the person in the home when the new appraiser comes. And when the second appraisal comes back, the value of their house has shot up more than $100,000, a 40% increase.
it was primarily financial relief. I'm just glad that we're going to get the rate that we want. And then I think it was about 15 seconds later when the tears came, because we realized just how much more removing that variable increased the value of our home. To know just how much, me personally, I was devaluing the home just by sitting in it, just by living my life, just by paying my mortgage, just by raising my son there.
After she posted her story on Facebook, there was a deluge of comments and people who said they had tried similar experiments with similar results. Andre Perry, a fellow at the Brookings Institution, wrote the book Know Your Price. He studies the effects of discrimination in housing.
What we found after controlling for education, crime, walkability, and all those fancy Zillow metrics, that homes in Black neighborhoods are devalued by 23%, and cumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity. $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million small businesses. It would have paid for more than 8 million college degrees. That discrimination is leading to a widening of the wealth gap. And so one can argue that we're in worse shape than we were 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Which made me think about an investigation ABC.
All
All
right.
right, I think this is time where we can get started with the panel discussion. Hopefully that video gave you a little insight as to some of the inequities that occur in real estate.
And again, we'll be sending all the audience members this PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to see the extended version of the ABC link that goes into a little bit more detail, you can. But this is kind of just to give you an idea of what we're going to be discussing. All right, so let's go ahead and start the questions off. And if you have any questions as an audience member, or if you want to make any comments, you could just comment inside the chat room. And we'll designate like the last 10 to 15 minutes of answering any questions. But if you could just stay on mute, all audience members. Right now, we just want to hear the panelists' opinions and perspectives. All right, number one, do you believe racism exists in the real estate industry? And if so, what forms does it take? Maybe you can share an example. I'll start this off with Kim Cameron.
Good evening, everyone. So, do I believe that racism exists in the real estate industry? Yes, I do. What forms does it take? Well, I'll go back to immediately after World War II, when GIs were coming back, and you both had GIs that were Black and white. And the GI Bill was established to allow those veterans to pay for housing. It was decided then that Black veterans could not partake in this. And not only that, that red lines were drawn around Black neighborhoods, which meant that that is called a practice that's called redlining. It is illegal today, but it still has its repercussions. Those red lines drawn around those Black neighborhoods, the banks decided not to lend in those neighborhoods. And so today in 2020, we still see those repercussions of disinvestments in predominantly Black neighborhoods. And I'll leave a very detailed, complicated answer with that little bit of high view as to how racism has existed in the real estate industry and how we're still paying for it today.
Thank you, Kim. Dr. Wells, what's your opinion about racism existing within the real estate industry?
Yes, I believe it is. We do have racism. I hear some of my constituents giving similar stories to the one that we just saw in the clip. And developers who say that their appraisals on one side of town in Greensboro are much less than the appraisal for the same square footage, same land and everything, but the appraisal is much lower. And that has caused this developer said that sometimes he just goes in another place because it's not even profitable to them. They can't do it with that kind of appraisals. So it does happen.
Thank you for that example. Marty, Kotis, what's your opinion
Yeah, I
about
think,
that? Go ahead.
so I think generally speaking, in terms of companies out there and developers in a commercial side, we don't see that sort of racism occurring on a broad basis. I think there are racist people that I've run across and seen for sure that are truly racist. It comes out, usually it's a very subtle thing or something somebody says. It's not like they're doing something, but you can tell they are. And I think that does impact if they're making decisions about something, for sure, that's affecting their judgment. But generally speaking, from a company standpoint, when a grocery store comes to town or a retailer comes to town, we're just not seeing them make decisions based on that. It's about money and about profitability, not about any sort of racial decision on their part.
Do you think that maybe it might be an unconscious thing, that maybe they might be doing it, but they're just not aware of it?
I think
Marty?
we see it, more overtly. I think if somebody's racist and they're willing to put a decision about profit, if they're in business and they're making decisions that are contrary to their business interests because of a racial bias, they're not truly a business person anyway. They're making decisions for personal reasons. And I think most people we see in business are making decisions based on business decisions, not on that. Though, again, I mean, there's tons of examples I've seen over 30 years in this business where I've seen people tell a racist joke inappropriately. I've seen them refer to certain areas of town inappropriately. And my response is, we don't do business with people like that. We don't hire anyone like that. And we don't want to work with anyone like that. Life's too short.
Thank you. Skip Alston, could you give me your opinion about whether or not you believe racism exists within the real estate industry?
Definitely so. I can piggyback on what's already been said, but from a personal standpoint, when I received my broker's license in 1982, I joined the NAACP in 1983. And immediately, Dr. George Simpkins appointed me as the housing chairman for the NAACP. So I had an opportunity to be able to work with people who had been discriminated against in those early years, and found that a lot of landlords during that time were evicting African Americans without even going to court, just going in and padlocking them and telling them just to get out of their homes, setting their stuff out on the curb. And I had to take a couple of those landlords to court, and we won it. So it was existing then, it's existing now. And when I served also, I served 8 years on the North Carolina Real Estate Commission and served 2 years as chairman of that commission. And a lot of our realtors were brought before the Real Estate Commission because they were racial steering. Some brokers, they would steer Black people into Black neighborhoods. They wouldn't take, they'd tell them, I'm looking for a 4-bedroom, 3 baths, probably in the $400,000, $500,000 price range. They won't take them in the neighborhoods where they know they got influential whites. And they was found to be guilty, and we took a lot of the license from them because of that. We had landlords that refusing to lease to African Americans. They had their broker's license. We took their broker's license from them because of that. So it's existing then, it's existing now. It's not as blatant as it was in the 50s and the 60s, but it's still existing. And we just have to have the right people in the right places in order to identify it and call it out. So yes, it does still, it exists. It's been existing for hundreds of years, and it's still existing now, but it's like Marty says, a little more subtle now than blatant as it was in the early years.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next question is, historically, how has race influenced real estate in Greensboro Kim kind of brushed on that, but why is it important to preserve buildings? And do you believe, and this is a kind of threefold question, so answer at will, but do you believe race plays a role in the homes and buildings that have historically been preserved? So I'll start this question off with Benjamin Briggs of Preservation Greensboro. Historically, can you tell us how race has influenced historical homes in Greensboro and what we preserve today?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because early in Greensboro's history, and we're talking about 120 years ago, the 1890s, Greensboro was not racially segregated, maybe as it was in the 1960s and 70s. In West Greensboro, in the middle of College Hill, in Westerwood, there was a small community near Sunset Hills called Little Rhode Island. These were Black enclaves of people, often with a Black church, and people were scattered around our community in broader patterns. And it was through deed restrictions and racial steering that Mr. Alston spoke about, that beginning around 1900 into the 19-teens, Greensboro was more divided into east and west versus north and south in terms of racial composition. And really that was strengthened beginning in 1936, as Kim Cameron pointed out, with redlining, which was done through the government in order to guide banks in making loans and mortgages and determining the interest rates that would be charged on different properties. And 4 areas that had a high percentage of African-American populations, they were considered by this central bank to be more risky. And areas that were in North and West Greensboro that were more white composition were seen to be more secure and safer investments. So that really led to Greensboro as we see it today. And as far as buildings that are preserved, there's been an evolution of understanding of what buildings are important across the nation. And we've sort of steered from very wealthy people being celebrated, white people being celebrated, and evolved through years to include women, and including diversity of buildings such as factories, including diverse neighborhoods such as mill villages. South Greensboro was placed on the National Register in the 1990s. The East White Oak Newtown Mill Village was placed at the same time. East White Oak School was placed on the National Register at that time. So there's been an evolution of understanding of what's important in our community, and we're always working to push those boundaries and to recalibrate what we celebrate and how we celebrate Greensboro's history.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Ray, Trapp, would you mind answering that question about, give us your thoughts about how race has influenced real estate and the way that we preserve historical homes and buildings?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sunny, and thanks for the question. I'll point no further than downtown Greensboro to talk about how race plays a role. Downtown Greensboro and the death of downtown Greensboro happened with desegregation. When it was desegregated and Black folks were allowed to go downtown and to shop and to eat in the same places that white folks previously only had that option, that led to the death of what we know of downtown. So if we look now, we've worked years of intentional building downtown. And Mr. Alston, the Civil Rights Museum, he had to do that himself. You know, that anytime that we've seen Black folks preserving Black buildings, we've had to take that on ourselves. And so I think that's what you see intentionally. And so now the focus has shifted back to downtown and how we get people to come back downtown. Well, it was self-imposed. We did it to ourselves through racist tactics and through racism. We destroyed our own downtown for areas of Friendly Center and other areas that were built up because truthfully, white folks had access to them and Black folks didn't have transportation to get out there. And so now we're seeing that reinvestment back into downtown. But historically, we've definitely seen it every which way. Anytime there has been racist practice, you see that, and preservation is no different. you know, out of our historic districts in the city of Greensboro, how many of them are African American? That's a rhetorical question.
That's very true. That's very true. Benjamin, do you know the answer to that? Do you know how many historical districts in Greensboro are African American or Latino American or anything outside of white?
Yeah, well, that's a challenging question because there's two different types of districts. One is
I'm on mute. I ain't got the camera on because I'm showing it.
I'm sorry, I muted her.
Yeah,
go ahead.
3 historic districts. One is one with a high level of design review, and those are College Hill, Fisher Park, and the ACOC / now we're calling it the Dunleith neighborhood. And those are voluntary districts that are really instigated by the community. And there have been no new historic districts since 1984. There was interest in maybe doing one in around A&T in the late 1980s, but that never got feet and traction by the folks who lived in the neighborhood. They didn't want those design guidelines imposed. Historic National Register level historic districts, we have one ginormous district, which is along MLK and Old Ashboro neighborhood, that's been on the National Register since the early 1990s. And we're currently working on a new ginormous one that could include Benbow Park and Clinton Hills. And I'm hoping that the neighborhood will embrace that. It's nothing that I'm imposing on the neighborhood or anybody's imposing, but I hope the neighborhood will celebrate that. It seems like they're interested. So 2 compared to probably 10, if you look at the count, the mill villages included in that.
Benjamin, what are the volunteering districts? I'm sorry.
All right. Okay, go on.
I wanted to just get clarification on that one thing. What does that mean to say the volunteering districts?
It really means that the neighborhood has to step up and bring it to Greensboro City Council. So Fisher Park, College Hill, and the Dunleith neighborhood back in the early 1980s really petitioned Greensboro City Council to have those neighborhoods designated. An example of one that's failed recently was Westerwood. Westerwood tried to petition for a local historic district around the year 2000, and they just didn't get enough votes within the neighborhood to get that approved, and the city council didn't feel confident in having it designated.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wells, please share.
Yes. I'd like to, would like to applaud Mr. Pass and his daughter for restoring the Magnolia House. And right down the street is a house that Dina Hayes lives in now. And that house was the cause of a big uproar in Greensboro back in, I think it was 1913, when the person who, I think it was Winston, it was the last name, but Winston or Windsor, he was acting as president of Bennett, and he bought that house on the corner, the house where Dina lives now on Garl and Martin Street. Well, when they found out, they said he was an intelligent Black man, and he was light-skinned, and you know, he was going along well, everything was going well, and he had purchased the house, and they thought it was for his sister. Well, when they found out that a Black man was going to move there, they had an emergency city council meeting and passed an ordinance, and that one had already been passed in Winston. So they passed one in Greensboro saying that we could not have Black folks living together. And the reason was, it was to prevent conflict. And it was for promoting public peace, that African Americans and white folks did not need to live together. I've been reading this book, and the book by Elizabeth Herbin Tarrant called Threatening Property, Race, Class, and Campaigns to Legislate Jim Crow Neighborhoods. And she talks about the classes of people, and there's the white elite, and then there's the white middling class, and the middling class wants to keep someone below them. So they have been the ones who've been pushing to keep that segregation, you know, between the whites and the black, and it continues. So that's all I had to say. But we are now waking up and preserving some houses that we know have history now, but we have not gone to a whole historic district. And I think that's a little bit difficult for us to do because there's no real area. I'm glad Benbow Park is going to be included in Benbow Road because those houses were built at a certain time by certain architects. So that's good. But most of us are just scattered. Black folks are scattered all over the city. So there was no real place that was just for us.
And I understand that. I know for myself, I only learned about like Warnersville and it being torn down through us doing a public mural project through that. But it's nothing that we learned in school. It's not something that, you know, anyone is conscious or aware of. And sometimes people do believe that racism doesn't exist or that everybody has the same fair breaks or that anybody can move into my neighborhood. It's nothing. But the reality is that it is a lot more challenging. It is a lot more difficult. And when it comes to preserving the history of things, that also presents that challenge because it's like, what do we value and how do we see people? How do we see certain communities? And when you said something about just kind of being safer or, you know, feeling like they didn't want too many of us congregating together, that whole idea of, I don't know, I think like people are gonna go crazy and act ape-like and I don't know. But okay, next question, I digress. How is value determined when appraising property? And what can we do to raise the value of an area or neighborhood? So this kind of touches on gentrification a little bit, but let's start this one off with Marty. What are your thoughts when it comes to appraising properties and raising the value of an area?
Yes, an appraisal should be based on what properties have historically sold for in that area. So I don't deal with residential real estate, I deal with commercial real estate. But in commercial real estate, it's based on other comparable sales in the market, what's sold nearby, similar product, et cetera. So the way you raise and appraise value is if the market is trending higher, if things are selling higher in that area. I've had good appraisals and bad appraisals over the years. I've disputed them, but the main thing you can do to kind of combat a bad appraisal is to have your data and know your market and know exactly what's going on and be able to kind of argue your point and provide comparables and show people that something is worth what you think it's worth. And that's probably the best way to deal with bad appraisers. And if they do something like happened in the video, you call the Appraiser Institute and you file a claim against them because they can't do stuff like that. And that should be thrown out. That appraisal should be thrown out. The appraiser should be fired if they're doing something like that.
Thank you. That's very good information to have. That's a very good tool to have to really kind of educate yourself. Let me move on to Benjamin. Benjamin, can you tell us what you think, how can we raise the values when it comes to homes and areas when it comes to appraisals?
Well, we always want to be considerate and not cause a dramatic inflation because that can make housing unaffordable for lots of people. So there's a balance. We want to have neighborhoods that are safe and that there's investment going on, but we don't want something to spiral in a way that that causes the people who live in this neighborhood to have to leave because they can't afford it anymore. So a gentle example of what we've done here in Greensboro is the called Old Ashboro National Register Historic District that really extends from downtown all the way down to Florida Street along both sides of MLK. This designation was made around 1992. And through its National Register designation, just as Fisher Park and Irving Park and Sunset Hills enjoys, this neighborhood enjoys historic preservation tax credits that can be used up to about 15% of the investment made in the building can be taken off as a tax credit on one's taxes. If it's an income property, it can be more than that, 20 to 25%. So what that does is it somewhat stabilizes the neighborhood. It provides an incentive for homeowners and for investors to keep putting money into those houses and keep them in good condition, not necessarily spiraling upwards in price to the point where it causes gentrification. And hopefully people feel like the neighborhood along MLK on both sides down to Florida Street is, you know, it's not a gentrified neighborhood per se, but maybe it's been stabilized from where it was perhaps 30 years ago. I don't have a deep history in Greensboro, but that would be a way to use a tool in historic preservation to stabilize a neighborhood and to gently encourage investment so that there's maintenance and upkeep happening.
I like that. Kim, what are your thoughts about appraisals and how to raise the value of an area?
So appraisals are based upon several items. If we want to get technical, it's based upon sales comparisons. It could be, if it's an income property or some type of commercial property, it could be based upon the potential income that property can come off that property, and then also replacement value. So if that property burned down, how much would it cost to replace that house? So if you talk about those three technical items, you know, you would think that it would be a slam dunk, that there would be no bias in appraisals, but unfortunately there is, because when you go to that sales comparison, if you're in a disinvested neighborhood where the same types of houses aren't valued as much, that's where you'll run into those issues. But what creates that type of neighborhood? I alluded to the redlining, that we continue to have repercussions that did not allow Black folks to own property. We were only able to be renters. We weren't able to own, which meant we could not invest in our property. We could not create that Black wealth in our neighborhoods or for ourselves to be able to pass that on to generations to come. That kept people from going to college. A lot of people tell stories about their parents paid off their houses or used the equity in the house to be able to pay for college. Though that has happened, what can we do to raise the value of a neighborhood? So the thing that you want to do, Benjamin talked about gentrification. You don't want to cause gentrification because you don't want to have the folks that have been living there for years to move out and not be able to afford their homes, because basically what happens when the value of the house goes up, your taxes go up, and that can make your mortgage unaffordable, or you cannot afford the taxes, or something happens where you can't even pay insurance on your house. So if something happens, a tree falls, you can't repair the roof, then your house becomes condemned, and it snowballs. What I've seen in other cities is that there have been owner-occupied rehab programs that the city has funded with home funds or CDBG funds, where it allows about $40,000 per house. And I used to run one of those. I ran two of those, one in Milwaukee and one in Atlanta. And those code violations are repaired on the house by the nonprofit. Typically it was a nonprofit, and it was at no cost to that homeowner. And so it was painting, roof repair, leaks, things like that, which tend to have a person lose their home. The only problem with that was a lot of people didn't have homeowners insurance. You need a homeowners insurance, and that was a deterrent for a lot. So that still needs to be solved. A lot of times too, when you look at the appraisal, the income of the neighborhood is looked at. The crime and safety of the neighborhood is also looked at. And so another thing I think I contemplate when we talk about raising the value of a neighborhood, and I like to call it gentrification with justice, which means you allow others to come into the neighborhood and own houses or own other types of commercial property. And that's being able to provide a variety of housing options. So it may not just be single family, it may be some townhouses, it may be some other types of rentals in there. Two other tools that you could use are land trust, where you buy the property, it's put into a land trust, and it controls the specific use of the land. It controls the taxes. It keeps houses affordable, homes affordable for some folks, and you typically use it in a mixed income type of situation. The other thing is deeds. If a house is developed and it is at an affordable level, you file that deed and it has to continue to be sold to someone else at an affordable level, no matter what else goes on in the neighborhood. And so a lot of times what happens is when you have these neighborhoods that have been disinvested for a very long time, the values are decreased. A lot of people come in and buy these houses that are really cheap. And then that's when you see them, they're torn down and they build the McMansions and things like that. So we need to look at ways of preserving this affordable housing through those other types of options of land trust or deeds, while at the same time providing a variety of housing options to other types of incomes. And when you get that mixed income, because you know, I think, you know, that's the best way to create a healthy neighborhood. And then you also support your local school, hopefully your local public school in your neighborhood as well.
Thank you, Kim. That's exactly what we need. We really want to know specific tools that we can use in order to change the current environment of what's been happening for years, decades, all of this, in order to not allow everyone to have the same opportunities. What about you, Commissioner Skip Alston? What are your thoughts about the appraisal process and how to create value within an area?
Well, being a county commissioner who sets your tax rate and who also reevaluates your house and your property every 5 years, that's an important factor in determining the value of your house. A lot of realtors, they look at also what's the tax value. What did the tax department appraise your property at over the past 5 years? Our evaluations took place for all properties in Gifford County in 2017, and will take place again in 2022. And we have to set our tax rate based on what the values are when we come back, when the tax director comes back and tells us what the tax value of all our properties are within the county. Now, a lot of people, it's kind of a two-edged sword there. Some people don't want their houses appraised high. Why? Because you have to pay more taxes. And they'll come down to the county and say, no, my house is not worth another $20,000 or $30,000. Okay, so I want you to reduce my value on my home, so I don't have to pay it no more taxes. Most of the time, the only people that want their houses valued high is when they get ready to sell it or plan on selling it. So therefore, you can get a higher price for it based on the tax value. So some people, like I said, in the neighborhood, they'll go down and advocate for their properties to be property tax value to be reduced so they can pay less taxes. And that kind of hurts the whole neighborhood, because if your whole neighborhood is kind of not going up in value as far as tax rate is concerned, then probably it's not going to go up in value as far as our sales and value is concerned. All the things that Kim talked about is very, very, very important also, but that's another factor we really have to look at is the tax value of your home. Because a lot of realtors, like I said, they'll look at the tax. If your house is priced $50,000 more than what the tax value is, they want to know why. The buyer want to know, why is it more than the tax value? And why is it lower than the tax value when you're trying to sell your house? And you think your house was worth a whole lot more than what the tax man said it was. So that's one key factor based on everything else that's been said also.
Okay. Thank you. Hadn't thought about that perspective. I know for us, what made me even think of this panel, my father is an architect and his office was destroyed in the tornado. And we were trying to work out all these things with the insurance and appraisals and all these things. And his office was appraised much lower than the amount to even build it. I mean, like it was extremely low where we were like, what? You know, so we had to get another appraisal and it was a whole scenario, but it really, really brought things into perspective for me as to how things are done, even when we don't want to believe that we're treated unfairly. Sometimes these things happen and there are so many different circumstances that are involved with it. And I'm glad that you and Kim and Marty are all giving us specific tools and specific things to do, because me and my sisters and my dad, we had to research to figure out, hold on, this is what we need to be asking him about, because this doesn't sound right, you know, and really questioning and being on top of things. But that's a part of it, is really educating yourself. And that is a part of what we need to do. Okay, moving on to our next question. Do you believe banks or financial industries give different rates or requirements to lenders based on race? Do you think companies have bias when choosing to set up businesses in particular areas? And again, sometimes these biases are unconscious. So I want us to talk about this. And this time I'm going to start it off with Ray. Ray, what are your thoughts about financial institutions when it comes to lending?
I absolutely 100% believe that banks and financial institutions give different rates to different races of people. There's unequivocal data out there that shows that this process is still going on. I think Judge Kubish had put it in there, just 2017, now finally being settled 2019, 2020, Wells Fargo is going to have to pay the city of Philadelphia $10 million for racial discrimination. The justice lawsuits that are ongoing against First Merchants Bank. All of these things still continue to happen. I think that we get caught up in it, and I'm glad you showed the piece earlier that was with the appraisal and the things that were going on with the young couple, but I wasn't shocked. I'm shocked that she was shocked. You know, I'm very shocked that she was shocked, but no, we know that this stuff still goes on to the tunes of multiple lawsuits. One of the things that we have to talk about, and I think it's intentional too, companies do pick sides. You look at the quality, and I'll just point out gas stations. Let's talk about gas stations for a second. The gas station that we have on the east side of town is going to be markedly different than the gas station that's going to be on the west side of town. The gas station that we have on the east side of town will have a check cashing component to it. It will have a lotto component to it. The west side gas station will be pretty much a small restaurant and a gas station. So you have to look at these two things, completely different. So yes, companies absolutely make a decision on where they're going to go. I won't call names, but I do know a commercial developer, and one of these gas stations that is always on the west side of town that has a small restaurant inside of it was looking off of Cone. Numbers made sense. It was exact numbers and everything else. This national gas station told the developer, you know, I can't come to East Greensboro. I can't come to East Greensboro, even though financially it made perfect sense. So what did they do? They settled and moved somewhere further. So we've got to stop beating around the bush on these things. If you look at the university that Kim and I work for, there are no amenities around there. Disposable income of 13,000 college students, but we don't have amenities that they have. The closest place when our kids move in and they want to go somewhere to shop for things that they need, from linen or whatever, they have to go to Target on Lawndale, that or Walmart. Those are the two closest locations that they have. And so I think that we're setting ourselves up for failure if we don't have real conversations. And the real conversations are that people are putting race, they're putting Black over green. And that's absolutely the truth. And we can talk about it, but the evidence is absolutely there. And personally, I do know of a friend, a white friend, that was purchasing a home around the same time that I was purchasing a home. Credit score is about the same, absolutely no. My household income was higher than theirs. they got more of an increase and more of a higher limit to purchase their home than I did. And their interest rates were also lower. So you can't tell me that it wasn't based off of race.
Thank you, Ray. That's such a great example. And the clip that we showed earlier today, we only showed a short portion of that, but if you watch the extended version, it gives an example of exactly what Ray is talking about. I mean, it's a survey that they did over 10 years ago, actually. And they did the same thing. A Black person, a white person, went to the same university, majored in the same, you know, made the same amount of money, and the rate at which the African-American man was charged as opposed to the white, and the interest rates, all those things were vastly different. And the reporters came in right after and said, what was the difference? Can you tell me the difference? And they said, well, everybody's different. They said, well, no, nothing's different about them. Can you explain that? And they didn't have an explanation for that. And that shows them 10 years ago as opposed to now. And the situations are very, very similar. So the things that we're talking about are very, very real. And that's the point of us having this conversation, is to make everyone aware, because sometimes it's not within our realm, it's unconscious, but in order for us to really make change, we have to not be afraid to know that this is out there and to begin to make those proper changes. Okay, I'm getting off the soapbox. Let me go to the next panelist. Marty, what are your thoughts about the financial industry and the lending and all of these things that we're talking about? What are your thoughts about it?
Yes, so in the financial industry, I couldn't really comment. I don't know what other people are charged for rates or how likely they are to get loans, but I've spent a lot of time and done developments all over the country, operated in Atlanta and DC and Baltimore, and in areas which are minority majority areas. And I hate to disagree here, but I'm not seeing people avoid areas simply because of race, because in Atlanta and DC and Baltimore, Chicago, everywhere else, you have different businesses. What I'm hearing from retailers when they're looking in the area, and we did a sheet steel in East Greensboro, at Wendover in the Outer Loop, and my other one was on Battleground Avenue. So I've done two, one in the West, one in the East. We've got shopping centers in East Greensboro. I'll continue to invest in East Greensboro and South Greensboro because I think there's opportunity there, and I think it's a chance for growth. But when we hear businesses like grocery stores talking about where they want to locate, they talk about household incomes, they talk about disposable income, they talk about population density too, and they talk about education levels. And those are often the things that kind of factor into a larger or a higher end retailer. And let's say we don't even make the cut for a Neiman Marcus or something like that coming to Greensboro as a whole, because we don't have enough people with enough income compared to other markets. So I'm not seeing any discussion. I've seen some examples of it out there where you had a racist site selector out there. So I'm not saying that it doesn't occur, but generally speaking, businesses, including all sorts of minority-owned businesses, are making decisions based on where they believe they'll be successful. And again, if that were the case, you wouldn't see some of these in Atlanta, Baltimore, DC, Chicago, if it were purely based on race. I think it's often more based on income levels and education levels and density.
Well, let me ask you this, Marty, because you're from Greensboro, so you have a very unique perspective. And I feel as though you would have been able to kind of see the evolution when it comes to real estate. Some of the things that Ray had mentioned before about downtown, the destruction of downtown and then rebuilding downtown. And I know when I was a young girl, downtown Greensboro was filled with dilapidated buildings. And I vaguely remember a Woolworths, but I mean, that was kind of before my time, but I can, as a resident that's from there, see the differences and the changes. What do you think about the fact that we don't have all of these amenities around A&T State University that was mentioned before, if people are not associating it with race at all? Because it seems like the money would be there It's very similar to UNCG, where there are students over there that have parents who have money. There are middle-class homes that are around there. Like, why do you believe, as someone who's from Greensboro and now a developer and who has friends, and I know you mentioned that sometimes you may hear some of these people saying off-put comments or things of that nature. So why do you feel as though people aren't investing if it has nothing at all to do about race? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, you've got a large tract of land that United House of Prayer owns that's ripe for development, and they could develop it at any time. Anyone could open up a business over there tomorrow and serve the area. A&T has been acquiring houses through that area and tearing them down for new buildings. I think just recently acquired 20 or so houses for demolition over there. So there's been,
It was 19 that came before you, Marty.
Yeah, okay. So I was off by one. Instead of 20, it's 19. 19 houses that were going to be demolished. And you've got the War Memorial Stadium, of course, it's being acquired too. So A&T has been very active in that area. We've seen UNCG be very active over on Gate City Boulevard, building multifamily as well as some retail over there. Sometimes in the college areas and downtown areas, it's difficult for retailers to go because of lack of parking sometimes. It's challenging like that on Tate Street too. And that's why we tend to see more of like the Windover and I-40 or the Battleground area for it. But, I would say, it's probably ripe for A&T to add additional services in the same way that UNCG has along Gate City Boulevard and really lead the charge over there. And I know that's a balance because you got to worry about what's it going to do to the area as well. So, and I think United House of Prayer has a great opportunity to step up and really make a big investment and capitalize on the engineering school that's just been built with some good housing nearby.
That's a good point. And let me get Dr. Wells's opinion and then Commissioner Alston. And we're going to- Can
I just chime in eventually and answer some of this too?
Sure, yes. Go ahead, Kim.
Go ahead, Kim. Go ahead, Kim. Kim's the expert. Go on, Kim.
Yes. Go ahead, Kim. I apologize.
So I want to address a couple of things. As a former AT alien, the history of Atlanta really lends itself to why Atlanta is Atlanta, why it's considered a Black Mecca, why DC is considered a chocolate city, and people spend money there. They don't have any damn choice really, because there's too many Black people there, right? And I got one other name why Atlanta is Atlanta, and that's Maynard Jackson, all right? If you know anything about him and his history and all of the programs that he put in place to ensure that the capacity of Black businesses were built, and it's anecdotal information, but it is true, people hire people who look like them. So I used to work for Herman J. Russell. So, all these businesses were built up to capacity, built Black millionaires, which in turn hire Black folks to give them good salaries and to increase their income and their education. So that's why those cities are that way. You have to think about the history and be confronted with the history of Greensboro and other areas, what they have not done in those similar capacities. It's a fight to build up, to do MWBE programs for Black businesses in anywhere in North Carolina. It's a fight. That's just a damn fact. I'm sorry, I'm cussing, but I'm channeling Andy Perkins right now, right? It's just a fact. And yes, A&T as the anchor institution in East Greensboro is going to step up to the plate and do what we need to do. But it does not make any sense why East Market Street does not look like West Market Street when you got disposable income and everything. There has been no investment in East Market Street for in just East Greensboro in 30 plus years. That's just a fact of the matter. I'm gonna stop, but I wanted to address some of those things. So it is biased. It is, but it's just as simple as that. It's biased. I'm 30 years now in the commercial real estate industry and construction industry. I've often been the only Black woman and the only woman, period, sitting around tables. And it is very difficult to get people to see their own biases. They will fight you tooth and nail and give you every single reason as to why it is a business decision. But there are so many studies that have been done that show that if there is diversity and you really truly look at green is green. I mean, if people allowed Black folks' income to be elevated, we are missing out on $4.5 trillion in the GDP in the United States because of leaving Black folks out of the economic system. It's just a reality. We are not in this situation just because we want to be. Right. There are intelligent Black folks. There are Black folks that want to make money, but there are systematic barriers for us to reach those levels. And I'm gonna stop there.
And Kim, I'm snapping like this underneath the table like this. Because this is we want to have a real conversation, right? Because we can't change anything if we're tiptoeing and we're nervous to say what the real issues are. And I appreciate you, and I'm so glad that you're a panelist and you're speaking from a authentic and genuine and educated place. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Wells, yes, ma'am.
Kim hit it on the head. She said in North Carolina, it's hard. It was discovered after slavery and the emancipation. Black folk bought land, they were building, they were going forth. And it was the middling white folks, not the elite, because the elite, as long as we kept on working for them, they were fine. But the middling whites did not want the Blacks to get past them. So if you buy land, that's wealth. You have houses and you have land, that's wealth. So there have been barriers that have been presented to us over and over to keep us. Now, Kim says there's no reason why East Market Street should not be developed. If you look at the old pictures on East Market Street, there was everything Black people needed: theater, pharmacy, everything. And then what did they call it? When they came through and just went through the neighborhood.
Well, they systematically did that across the United States.
Across the United States, they did it in
urban renewal.
Urban renewal.
Black communities.
They did. Went through in Detroit.
United States.
Yeah, they did Detroit, Chicago, Greensboro, and I looked at the books when those businesses were destroyed. They didn't give them enough money to rebuild. If you look around, all of our churches, Black churches, are relatively modern churches. We had beautiful churches over there on Ash Street and in Warnersville, high steps and well built like cathedrals almost. And they tore those down and left us to have to build new churches, have to build everything with nothing to build with. It was a way of bringing us back in line, and that continues now. If you cannot gain wealth, then that takes away your power, and that's what we're dealing with now. And so what they say is do it yourself. So Marty's saying your A&T should step up to the plate, but it's do it yourself. He doesn't see it the way we would see it because he is at a level where the money is made, and he'll go into any place where there's money. But there are some biases that are there that they won't. I know how long it took us to try to get a grocery store, and Kim knows about the facts, but knows the things she had to go through trying to get that shopping center renovated over here on the east side. It's a lot different. And we must be real. We must be real about this thing. We must learn as much as we can about how to gain wealth. We really need to do a lot of educating on that, taking the money and investing and trying to make what we have make more, and not just spend it all on how we look and how we drive and all. We got to do a whole lot of rethinking. But if you have land, that is some wealth. It is.
I agree, and I'm so glad that you all brought up those examples, because now we're starting to see the examples of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the bombings were, and a variety of places where literally people destroyed any community or city where African Americans were bustling and making tons of money. And it was either killing them or burning down buildings or legally tearing things down, as they did in Warnersville, and build projects where there were middle-class homes and bustling businesses. And history most definitely plays a part in what our current situation is. And what I see is that a lot of people want to change history, and the fact that they don't want us to really know the real history of things, you know. And that's why I was saying, even with Warnersville or different things that happen in Greensboro, I'm like, what? I'm from Greensboro, I never knew. But that ignorance is also very purposeful, so that when these other things happen, you don't have anything to relate it to and say, well, dang, we used to have all this stuff. It just seems like we just never have, and now we need to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, while other people are able to get funding and incentives and all these other things from the city and the federal and the state and government and all these other ways of being able to help progress. And so those are issues that we have. But at the same time, all of our panelists tonight have also, within having conversations with us, given us really great tools that when we do see that these things are happening, what to question, what to say, what we need to do. And that brings us to our last question for the night. And I want to hurry up with this one because I want to give us at least 10 minutes to answer the questions that people have put in the chat. And the last question is, what can everyone do to make the real estate industry more equitable? Like, what steps do you suggest? And this kind of just goes back to what we've been discussing tonight. But what are specific things that we can feel empowered? I want us to leave here not feeling victimized, but feeling a sense of empowerment and a sense of being knowledgeable, aware, and wanting to learn more. So I'm gonna start this one off with Commissioner Alston. Commissioner Alston, can you tell us, well, what do you think, what can you advise us as steps to take when it comes to home ownership and making sure that we're treated fairly, or that everyone is treated fairly?
As far as home ownership and getting a loan, number one, keep your credit in good shape. Okay, make sure that you keep your FICO score up. Make sure that you pay your bills on time. So when you go for a loan, the bank can't turn you down because of your credit score. Your credit score dictates your interest rate that they're going to charge you. And they can also dictate a whole lot of other things as far as when you got good credit, you can go into the bank and you can say, look, I'm here to do you a favor. I'm going to allow you to loan me some money. Okay, I'm not here begging for it. I can go anywhere and get a loan. I'm here to do a favor for you to have the opportunity to give me a loan because you're gonna make some money off of me. And that's the position you need to try to make sure you put yourself in, so you don't have to worry about whether or not your credit score is gonna keep you from getting a good loan or get a good interest rate or not. Also, if you're renting, and your credit score is good, go ahead and purchase a house, because like so many people have said, it's value and profit in buying a house. Some of our young people around here now paying $1,400, $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. They can be paying that same amount for a home, but they don't look at it from that perspective. They rather rent rather than buy. I encourage everybody that can, every young person that can, if you can rent and your credit is in good shape, buy a home, because then you're investing in yourself, you're investing in your kids' future, you're investing in your future. If your equity goes up, that's money in your pocket. And that's something you can leave your kids also. So try to buy as much real estate as you can. That's one of the most protected value as far as your money is concerned. It usually don't go down like some other investments. So don't be afraid to go out there and try to buy a home and buy some investment properties and invest in commercial properties if you can. And some of us really need to get together in the African-American community to try to be a developer. But we need to make sure that we don't have the attitude where what's in it for me and who's going to be in charge of that type of thing. So we need to really look at coming together in the African-American community and forming an investment group in order to buy up some of the property of our own and improve it and develop it. Like Marty was saying, we have property in our area that we can purchase ourselves if we want to try to do it and make it happen, and don't have to ask anybody else to come in our neighborhood in order to make it happen.
Well, I hear that. Now, Commissioner, also, are you volunteering to be a mentor to some people who would like to go into development?
Definitely so. I mean,
Okay.
I started my real estate company in 1982. And at one point I had 25 agents that worked for me. And I encourage every last one of them. I said, you can stay here in my company and make me money, or you can go out and establish your own real estate company and make your own self some money. Out of my company over that period of time, 10 Black real estate companies have come from my company and developed their own company. So I'm always encouraging, especially African-American young men and women, go out there and do it for yourself. It's good for you to come and make money for me off a commission, but you can do it. If you can do it for me, you can do it for yourself. And I've always encouraged young African-American entrepreneurs to try to go out there and take a chance. If you can work for somebody else and do a good job, then you can work for yourself. And I stand ready to help them in every way that I possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to move on to Benjamin. Benjamin, what are your thoughts?
My help is easy. So the threshold for historic buildings generally is 50 years now. So that's 1970. And Greensboro has so much history related to civil rights history in North Carolina and the nation. And so I need help in identifying buildings built in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s that are associated with the benchmarks that we made in this city that contributed to where we are today in civil rights history. So if people are aware of historic sites of any era, but especially that mid-century era, please let us know so that we can begin a process to recognize them and celebrate them.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Kim. Kim Cameron, can you share?
I thought I shared enough earlier.
Well, very quickly, I want to get everybody. You always are dropping jewels.
What can we do to make the real estate industry more equitable? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
So, you know, what I'm doing is I'm really doing my part, right? So what I'm doing is the students at A&T, I'm taking them on as interns. I'm giving them real world experience in real estate. I'm having my intern right now run a performer for me on a property that we want to acquire. You know, there are several organizations out there, REEC, which is a Black real estate executive organization. This past Saturday, not this past Saturday, but Saturday before, I attended a summit on diversity in commercial real estate, which was awesome. So many of us have had similar experiences, and it just talked about how you get to your path in real estate. And both of these were centered around commercial real estate, not residential. So, you know, my undergraduate degree was construction management. Then I got an MBA in finance, which is how I got to the commercial real estate. I actually started out as a pharmacy major. So I had no idea construction management was even a road that I could take, right? So those construction management majors at A&T, I have two of them this past semester that work for the foundation. So I'm just constantly trying to reach out so they get these meaningful experiences that they could put on their resume and then go forward and get and get further ahead than I ever got, quicker than I ever got, because you know, I may not look that old, but I was like my daughter says, my mommy is not 35. She was born in the 1960s. So I had to fight and be very stubborn to get where I am. So I don't want everybody else to have to do that. So that's how I create equity in the real estate industry, to bring more of us up and educate them more and expose them quicker and more open to items that will elevate them to their new heights. That's what I do on my part.
Thank you. All right, we have 5 minutes left. And I do want to get a small jewel from each person, but I also want to give room for some really great questions, because I did notice some really great questions. I think we can limit it to like maybe 3 or 4 questions. But I'm hoping that maybe, I don't know if our panel can stay on the line for just an extra 5 minutes, just so we can give Marty and Ray a very quick moment to share what they feel like are things that we can do to change, and so that we can go ahead and just answer a few audience members' questions. Is that okay, panel? Can you just put your thumbs up for a second?
I'm happy to stay on longer.
Okay, great. All right, very quickly, Marty, what are things that we can do?
So we're investing in 6 different places this year in East Greensboro. One is over at Church Street. We've some different things we can do. So I'll give you some examples of stuff I'm doing right now, and that may inspire someone else for what they can do too. We're doing a commissary kitchen. We've got a commissary kitchen going in our Church Crossing Center that allows startup restaurants to work out of there and have a space to grow their business. I think growing small businesses is kind of the key to growing the city of Greensboro. We've done an outdoor gallery over there this year as well during the pandemic to allow aspiring artists to show off their art. And we have commissioned artwork going on over there as well. We're going to be working to add affordable housing on that project on 9 acres I've got undeveloped there. At Cone Summit, we continue to bring in retail and users necessary, including PACE, which brought in very necessary medical and adult daycare for retired individuals. Out at Willow Lake, we're still struggling. We're trying to get in some use. I'd love to see a Topgolf type operation over there, but I'd also like to see grocery store and hardware, and we've been trying to coordinate with the adjoining property owners. That's at Wendover in the Outer Loop. In downtown, we've worked to just expand the experiential school, which will now cover K through 8, to provide a K through 8 option in downtown Greensboro, walkable for people. And probably my biggest project and capstone project that I'm working on is 11 acres down at Trax Bazaar, where we'll have a music venue, food hall, co-working space, micro shops, art gallery, and event center, all oriented around helping people start up their businesses and grow them, and providing a point of pride for South Greensboro as well along Gate City Boulevard at Eugene. And then we've got a new Che Chancho's restaurant that we're working on to open on Cone Boulevard across from Page High School. But my one thing that I would say for kind of a takeaway of actionable items that can help more people start up their businesses, and I know this has been echoed by others, is it's got to be easier for people to renovate spaces, and a lot of that is regulation. We deal with so much red tape that even with my resources, I find it extremely frustrating and cumbersome to try and develop some of these projects, and they sit there and take a while. I know probably Kim and Ray have dealt with this a lot as well on A&T's projects, and just trying all the time and paperwork and inspections. We've got to find a way to make it easier and more affordable for people to start up businesses.
Marty, very quickly, I'll ask you the same thing that I asked Skip. Are you open to mentoring people who would like to, or someone who's in real estate who would like to do business development? And are you open to hiring more minorities?
Yeah, and we do hire a lot of minorities as well, but we're always open to mentoring. Okay. And actually, one of my most proud moments is a mentee of mine, Deshaun Adams, that is going to go on to do great things, and I think we'll see him accomplish a lot in his lifetime.
Thank you. I'll go on to Goldie. I did not forget about you, Dr. Wells.
No.
Could you tell us your thoughts?
Well, where I sit on council, I will do all that I can to try to make it better. You hear complaints, and I'm listening, and I'm hearing Marty. He's saying that we've got to make it easier, and those are the things that are regulated at city level. And I know the mayor is on, and so she's listening too. Some of the things that we can do to make it better, and look at some of these inequities and see if we can make things better.
Thank you. All right, Ray Trapp, let's get it.
Yeah,
Last but not least.
Absolutely. I'll be quick because it's very simple to me. We need more Greenwood banks. We need more M&Fs. Greenwood Bank is the bank that Killer Mike and Andrew Young just started. We need more Black surveyors. We need more Black lenders. We need more Black appraisers. We need more Black folks across the board in the real estate industry. And that's when you start to see change. We also have to take it upon ourselves and get more involved with land use. One of the most important boards in the city of Greensboro is the Zoning Commission. We have 6 Black members on the Zoning Commission. That is historic for the city of Greensboro. So we have to make sure that we show up in places like these and spaces like these where previously we have not been. I was the first person to actually chair the City of Greensboro Zoning Commission in 2009. So think about that. Never before then in a city that has a minority population that we have. So we have to make sure that these spaces that previously we have not showed up in, that we're present.
Thank you, Ray. All right, so the last few minutes, Tirsa, will you lead us with asking, we'll do like 2 to 3 questions from the audience?
Sure. So let's see. There are a few questions that really were connected to government, whether it be city or federal. So I'll sort of try to combine those into one question, and perhaps those panelists who are familiar with some of the topics can jump in and answer them. But one of the questions had to do with how can the city invest in some of the strategies that Kim talked about more to increase diversity. Another one that was related to government was how were the opportunity zones chosen in the county, and is there a way that we can better take advantage of them or allow opportunity zones to be in other places as well. So I think those two, the third question that had to do with government was just discussing how policy affects the disparity of wealth and inequities in property values. So I think the question about policy could sort of fit within the question about the city investing in strategies, as well as the question about the opportunity zones.
So maybe we can start that off with Dr. Wells.
Well, I'll have to be honest about it. I'm going to have to do a little more of educating myself with this particular area, but I know we need some changes, and the things that Kim talked about tonight, I really need to learn. She was rattling it off, all of this, the deeds and this and that. So I just have to learn a little bit more. And I do promise when I learn, I'm going to act on it. So I do realize that the city has a lot of responsibility for some of the things with our policies and our rules and regulations. So I will be working on that. The mayor's listening, so she'll be thinking about it also.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of things. So there are 2 nonprofits in actually Durham that, well, one is in Durham and one is in Orange County that use the land trust model for affordable housing development. One is the Durham Community Land Trust Partners, DCLT. I think that's, I know I used to go by their initials. And then the other is the, I believe it's the Orange County Housing Trust. You can find them by Googling. And Goldie, I know, well, I knew one of the, I don't know if any, I got to go see if anybody's retired or if folks are still there. But if, we need to set up a Zoom or whatever, I'll be happy to reach out and talk about that. There are whole entire conferences on land trusts that happen. So when I at one of my former jobs when I worked for Habitat for Humanity International, not an affiliate, but the international entity in Atlanta. I went to one of those conferences in Boulder, Colorado. There's whole entire conferences that study these land trust models and how they're used. The other thing is, running with the deed. So, that's a simple of how you record that, a legal, mechanism of doing that. That's not that difficult, is that you can designate a home or whatever to be nonprofit, and it only can be sold to another low income, 80%, 120%, whatever the AMI that you want to select to do that. So a lot of times what happens, so when you do that type of home ownership development for affordable, the mistake that some cities make, and Durham made this mistake, they made the person live in that house for 5 years. And after 5 years, that house could be sold on the open market. And so you had a whole entire neighborhood called Southside, where it was 51% affordable and 49% market. After 5 years, those houses that were sold for 140,000 sold at 300,000 after 5 years, and that all that work and all that affordable housing stock went away. And you talk about gentrification, you talk about city funded urban renewal. I mean, here we go again in this century that happened from the 1950s. So those are tools, and you have to look at what are the city's goals in the long term when you set these and when you do the comprehensive plan and things like that. As far as the opportunity zones, the Department of Commerce at the state level set the opportunity zones across the state. I think there was some partnership with the local areas, but it really was led by the governor and the deputy at the time. I know the person who they sit on the foundation board, my foundation's board, who set those opportunity zones. And they ensured that really all HBCUs were in an opportunity zone. Now have opportunity zones been taken advantage of? Have they worked? Very few, very few. The legislation was not clear. It was never clarified. It was never cleaned up. Typically, when you have these type of federal programs, they first come out, and then maybe a year or 6 months later, when all the experts start really looking at it, and it goes out of the politicians' hands, and it really goes into the departments that really have to run it and run those regulations, look for compliance. Usually they're cleaned up. And that never happened with the opportunity zones. And it was a very short window in which people could act and get that full 10-year benefit. And that window closed a year ago in December 2019. So it's going to be very hard to convince people to continue to take advantage of those of that type of funding. Believe me, we looked very deeply into that as the Real Estate Foundation to try to look at as a funding source for East Greensboro development. And it's just, and then you have some of the fun, then there was funds that were typically people were developers, and they've tried to put together opportunity fund. And I mean, I think real estate developers are great because I'm one too, but I'm not a fund manager, right? And so you don't want a real estate developer to be a fund manager. You don't want a fund manager to be a developer. So you had these people trying to do both. You don't want a general surgeon doing your brain surgery, that type of situation. So yeah, opportunity zones, we need to let that go.
I feel like, Kim, you need to speak to the council and kind of educate some folks, with the city, and kind of let people know what's going on. I think we have room just for one last question, and then we'll go ahead and close the night. This has been such a great and informative panel. I mean, powerhouses. Okay, last question, Tirsa.
Okay, I think this last question, it came from Jennifer Joyner, and it's something that perhaps Marty and Ray can touch on. But she asked, what is being done to diversify the real estate industry? She gave some stats in the chat about how only 1.3% of senior executive jobs in U.S. commercial real estate industry were held by Black men, and only 1% held by non-white women. So with that in mind, I know that Ray had suggested that we become more involved and take on positions. And I know that Marty also, stated how he has hired different people. So perhaps the two of you, and if anyone else can give input as well, can give an idea of whether anything is being done currently to diversify the real estate industry. And then if that is, how can we take advantage of that to put ourselves in those positions?
Right.
All right, I'll just be honest. Commercial real estate, you kind of got to have money already before you get into commercial real estate. If we're being completely honest about it, you have to have some type of financial backing or some type of financial wherewithal to even enter in commercial real estate. So that's the first thing that we have to do. The second thing is making sure that career options are out there and they're present. A lot of people, when they come to higher ed or when they graduate from high school, aren't sure. And we're not presenting them the real estate career as an option outside of being a residential broker. People aren't looking at being a surveyor or being an appraiser or anything like that. So I think that we have to continuously put these options in front of people and make sure that they understand the pathway to get there. So that's absolutely how it'll change. But we have to continuously push that and make sure that people understand.
Thank you. Marty?
Yeah, I think you've got to have people start out in the job they can get. So that may be leasing, that may be brokerage, that may be apartment management, and then move up from there, build up some equity out there. My first loan was from a friend of mine. Her dad gave me a loan at 15% interest, which was really high, today's standard, but back then I was willing to pay it to get that deal done. And, I think you've got to, you've got to kind of, work your way through that, and you build up that equity over time. You do some deals, and as you do deals and you're successful, then you can use that equity to do more deals. I've spent 30 years trying to do it, and I still am out there, kind of plugging away, trying to get things done. In terms of trying to get your foot in the door, there are a lot of great student memberships that you can join through ICSC, through CCIM. There's about 17, 20 different designations out there for real estate. Each one has a student membership for $25 or so. So it's good to get people when they're in school. It could be from high school to in college or in graduate school to attend these events and participate, and also do internships and mentorships as well.
All right.
Can I piggyback? So I think I kind of answered this question earlier too, about, because I'm typically the only one in the room when I'm sitting around the table in commercial real estate. And it's, again, I'm doing my part with the internships myself. Also, I mentioned REIC, R-E-E-C. I was trying to Google that real quick, but that is pretty much a Black commercial real estate organization. If you're a woman, there's also, it's the Real Estate Executive Council. That's what REEC stands for, REIC. There's also CREW. I'm a member of CREW, which is Commercial Real Estate Women. They also do, CREW also publishes a white paper every year that talks about the diversity or the lack of diversity in commercial real estate and steps to take on that. And I'm actually vice president of PT CREW coming in January 1 this year. So I just wanted to add that and just follow, find your mentors. I try to do that all the time. I try to mentor one of my former employers. All the younger Black women miss me because I tried to take time out and I try to bring people along and just expose them, again, like I said, a lot quicker than what I was exposed to coming up in the industry.
Thank you.
I so appreciate that, Kimberly. Once again, I just want to thank all of our audience members for tuning in today. Continue to watch out for our TAB Talks. Again, we're going to have a fundraiser in December on the lawn at Blandwood Mansion. I want to thank all of our distinguished panelists. I think that we've had a very spirited conversation tonight and we've learned a lot. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate with one another. I'm hoping that Kim can help work with the city, kind of let them know some things that need to be done, that Ray can continue doing what he's doing, Skip, Marty, everyone, Benjamin. I just appreciate you. I hope that you all have learned something from this panel. As I said before, within the following week, we'll send you the PowerPoint presentation. If you're interested in having a mentor or learning more, the first thing that I'll tell you is to go into the actual field. So if you're into real estate, take real estate classes. Learn more about the person that you're asking to mentor you before going to them. So do your research. So when you go to people and you want them to mentor you, you need to come from a place of wisdom and come from a place where you are genuinely and authentically hungry for information. And so that you're open to learning whatever it is, but don't go there as a blank slate. Everybody wants to know that you know a little bit of something before coming to them as a mentor. I hope this helped you. Have an excellent night. Thanks again for participating, and see you at our next Tab Talk. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, all of my panelists. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks,
Thank you, Goldie, Marty, Skip, Benjamin. Thank you. I'm sending y'all thank you cards.